just Onside. I know where OSU are in Abu Dhabi. Do you want to know where I am?
No, not really. Okay, go on there. Indulgence, are you? Where are you? Because it looks a
It's
little bit different.
it certainly is different. It's my summer accommodation. No, not really. It's I'm in Harrogate. There's a supply conference, so I'm there for that. But it's the first time in Harrogate. Absolutely outstanding. It's one of the most beautiful. I presume it's the city, but it's the most gorgeous city. Wonderful drive from Blackburn to Harrogate. Really, really scenic. It's amazing. And this is a hotel. It's called a Majestic Hotel. It's
Wow.
120 years old, I believe, which is what the reception staff were saying. It is outstanding. It is stunning. I mean, it's classical. It's not to everybody's taste, perhaps, but a lot of people like modern taste. But I'm of a certain vintage, so this sort of style is I was there for the blueprint, but it is absolutely magnificent. It really is. It's a stunning hotel. I wish I could sort of pan around and give you a real sort of view of not the room, but
Yeah.
outside. It's just absolutely gorgeous. But enough about where I am and what I'm doing. We've got footy to talk about. And it's been an amazing weekend. Well, certainly it was an amazing Tuesday. I'm not sure about Wednesday, which I'm sure you're going to talk about. But we were on Tuesday sort of served up one of the most amazing games that I certainly can remember. But we'll talk about that after the game from yesterday. Obviously, close to your heart, Arsenal.
Mhm.
Very tight game. Some would say very, very unfortunate Arsenal. Didn't get quite the rub of the green, but 1-1. I'm sure you'll take it. So talk about the game and how you feel. I presume you must be happy that you didn't get beat.
Yeah, exactly. You, but I think when you're away from home, back end of the season games, it seems like the very next game that Arsenal play is the most important in their season, and now it turns to Fulham on Saturday night, doesn't it, Ayub? So, listen, it was an incredible game. Never going to follow the amazing, let's say, attacking array of football that Tuesday night served up in terms of an all-time thriller. But it was compelling nonetheless, Ayub. I don't know if you agree, but it was still a pretty watchable game. Again, incredibly tight. As you would argue, Champions League semi-finals should be. You could think back to the kind of Jose Mourinho, Rafa Benitez days in Liverpool and Chelsea in terms of how those games were contested. Felt like a highly pressurized situation for the most part. Just on the game itself, Ayub, I think in the end, a draw is a fair result, just in terms of the game itself. It kind of swayed, didn't it? Kind of back and forth. Um, Early on, I felt Arsenal had, for the most part, the better of it, just in terms of that first half. And I think, given the penalty, and I thought it was a Stonewall penalty just because Gyökeres still had control of the situation in front of goal. I wouldn't say they merited a 1-0 lead, but I thought they were in the ascendancy from a control perspective. And then second half, Simeone, as his one, changed it tactically. And I thought Arteta adjusted a little bit too late in terms of the back five. Now, Simeone has spoken about post-game, Ayub, about how Arsenal, he factored in the fact that the fatigue was going to set in somewhat. Arsenal have played the most games out of any team in the top five leagues. That's 57 and counting. And you can imagine that not all games are made equally, are they? They are playing
Mm.
highly pressurized, highly leveraged games week in, week out, as it has to be. No complaints. This is what you're fighting for. Ultimately, you want to play in games that matter come April and come May. So I think in the end, a little bit of fatigue. Atletico Madrid, I thought, played wonderfully well to get back into the game. We'll talk about briefly later on, Ayub, about how they got back into the game, which was a very controversial incident. But yeah, in the end, they did pour it on a little bit. I thought Arsenal defended for the most part fairly well. And then back end of the game, Ayub, Arsenal again exerted a bit more control, didn't they? Once the substitutions came on, it felt as though they could nick it. And then it was the case of the third penalty incident, let's say, with Eze's penalty being given and then reversed. So just very quickly on the game itself, Ayub, I thought in the end a fair result. I'm not sure either team did enough to justify a win. That's just my opinion, because I thought both teams had moments and had situations that they could perhaps look back upon with some regret. I thought maybe Atletico even had the better, more clinical chance or more clear-cut chances. But Arsenal dug in, as is their want, Ayub, right now, digging in, a lot of spirit, which is what you need, Ayub, hostile environment, a cacophony of noise before the game, during the game. So I think anytime you can come away out of those situations, having not lost, is still
Mm.
unbeaten in the Champions League, is I think beneficial. I'm going to leave you just very quickly the Eze incident to yourself first. I'm going to talk actually initially about the Ben White one, if you'll indulge me in terms of the penalty being given. Now, Ayub, I think you've known me long enough now to know that I try and call it as fair as I can see it, and that's whether it's pro Arsenal against Arsenal, what have you. But I have a very strong view about sporting competition not being compromised by what I call superficial drama being injected into the narrative. And what I mean by that is, for the longest time, I felt as though often certain rules and interpretation of rules in many sports, by the way, is left to itself to simply create a narrative of controversy, talking points, the old discussion in the pub around a coffee, as though controversy is something that, in a sense, the authorities and the footballing fraternity encourages, because controversy, kind of piques interest, keeps TV shows going, keeps the interest flowing. And there is some argument that many feel as though that this is somewhat welcome and encouraged by those making the rules. I come from the other camp. I'm a purist. This is professional sports at the very highest level, Ayub, and you cannot compromise competition in the way that they are doing right now. That's back-to-back days, Ayub, of football at the highest level, punctuated by what I would call incompetence, either from the referee or in terms of the interpretation of the rules. And I'll talk about the two incidents. You had the Alfonso Davies handball in the PSG Bayern Munich game. It comes off his midriff onto his hand.
Mm.
It cannot be a handball. There's no further analysis needed. The rules simply state if it's coming off your body part and then hits your hand, which wasn't necessarily in some sort of, let's say, open position or anything like that. It's a random cross on the sideline. It's hit his midriff onto his hand, and you're giving a penalty for that. I mean, that is incredibly incompetent, if you ask me. I think they rushed through it. That's just my opinion. And similarly, if you watch the Ben White incident, Ayub, carefully, the corner shot is a scuffed effort. It's not going anywhere. Let's be very clear. It's not denying any advantageous position for the attacking team. And if you look very closely, it comes off Ben White's knee slash shin onto his hand, which was then next to his knee by the time the impact was made. The question I would ask you is, did it materially cause any negative impact onto the attacking team? It absolutely didn't. The ball was going nowhere. It's not an attacking situation. Is Ben White supposed to chop off his own arms? It was next to his knee, and it's come off his shin onto his hand. Now, for me, sport is just too important, Ayub. It's too valuable. I go back to the situation. I mean, I know you don't follow the sport, but just very quickly, Abu Dhabi, I think it was 2021, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, probably the greatest controversy in Formula One, when they literally changed the rules just to create a final lap, two-lap shootout between arguably the two greatest drivers in Formula One history. You can't just circumvent the rules just for entertainment's sake, are you? This is sport. This is not a game round the park, or whether at Corporation Park, as we would say in the good old Blackburn. It matters too much, are you, for us just to say a little bit of talking points, a bit healthy, isn't it? No, absolutely not. And for me, I would argue for my side, the Ben White incident for me is actually much more critical than the Eze one. The Eze one is a case of interpretation and how the rules are governed. Penalties given, was there enough as a clear and obvious error? We can discuss that. I'll let you actually take that one first. But the Ben White one shocks me. It's come off his shin onto his hand. I mean, so now players are supposed to calculate angles and what have you.
Mm.
It's going to hit this body part onto my hand. I mean, come on. This is football played at high octane speed. Semi-finals, are you? Champions League. We're talking competition at its finest. Let the 22 blokes out there competing at the highest level define whether this game is won or lost by Atletico or Arsenal. Don't insert yourself just to inject a little bit of drama and a little bit of excitement into the game. If the Champions League authorities UEFA does not step in to fix this handball nonsense, I mean, it's not in the spirit of the game. It absolutely is. And it really frustrated me yesterday. And it's not just because it was against Arsenal. It's because they happened back-to-back games. You saw the Davies one, you saw the Ben White one, and I just think for the life of me, you cannot have that. Not at the highest level. It's not a game. I mean, you can imagine what when you saw what Mikel Arteta spoke about after the game. He said 9.5 months we've been fighting to be in this particular position. It's too important. You cannot have it like this. Yes, he was talking about the Eze one, but from my side, if the Ben White situation doesn't happen, who knows? Do Arsenal hold on to a 1-0 win? Do they go on to actually, get another situation and get another goal? Perhaps uh, punching their ticket through to the Champions League final. You can imagine there's a lot at stake here. So
Mm.
I don't take it lightly. For me, I really yesterday, Tuesday as well, but yesterday I was left very frustrated by the sport that I love, thinking if this is football and if this is what's ultimately going to decide perhaps wins and losses, careers, jobs, and all the rest of it, I'm not sure it's a sport that I would kind of want to continue following because it's a different sport. It's a different sport in the Champions League because of these nonsense rules about handball. So I think there needs to be a major look and review of these rules, especially around the handball, because I just cannot have a situation where it comes off a body part, it then hits a hand. It's not as though it's even going in or anything like that. And we're just like, well, it's hit your hand. So it's a penalty. And I've come back to it 82% chance of scoring. If you look at the Alvarez penalty, it was bloody 100% chance of scoring.
Mm.
It's just too much. The punishment doesn't fit the crime. And the authorities must look at that. So, look, I don't want to kind of end on that note. Still a very compelling game. Arsenal still have it all in their hands. A home game at the Emirates Tuesday night to punch a ticket to the Champions League final against Atletico Madrid, which is a spirited but limited side. I think it's
Yeah.
still very much in their hands. So
Yeah.
that's what I'll end with there. Happy to hear your thoughts on that, as well as then perhaps the Eze incident as well. You.
Yeah, I'm gonna flesh that out a little bit more because you make a really interesting point. It is something that we've talked sort of previously about officiating and the rules of the game in a sense that perhaps is more of the focus on here. And I'm not sure what the solution is because these are conversations that I'm sure have been had many years previously, and I'm absolutely convinced that they'll be having conversations similar to this in years going forward. It's how you address this. I mean, I it the best way always is to look at other sports, and I think how other sports are governed, how the rules are introduced. I mean, in cricket, I mean, we're fans of cricket. I mean, I'm a huge fan of cricket, and I think cricket to a certain extent has got it right, but it's got smart people, and it's got ex-cricket people involved at the very highest end in terms of decision making, law making as well, especially now because there is a body, and it's former cricketers who are involved in decision making, and a lot of decisions. It's like with sort of DRS. I mean, that was a law introduced sort of based on sort of the ex-cricketers. They're very much an integral part of the law making, and I think maybe football needs to be sort of similar. Whether footballers have that sort of aptitude, I'm not too sure, but certainly I think it needs to be addressed something somewhere. And you're absolutely right. There's too much at stake, far too much at stake for there to be a decision made which is talked about for sort of months, years to come. I mean, there's many decisions in football where perhaps people are talking about it sort of many years later on. So certainly on that, but I think it's more of a decision that football as a whole, people involved in the game need to sort of say, right, enough is enough. Right, this is what we need to do. We need to maybe have a focus group, a committee to perhaps look at right, how do we sort of govern the game? How do we manage this game, which it's a global monster now. It's too big uh, an entity for people to sort of be talking about decision, bad official, sort of bad officiating, or sort of rules which make no sense. So on that, I think it's much more than just the game. I think there's much more to it than that. But before I speak about it,
Yep.
the SA decision, I'd like your thoughts because it's something that you've obviously talked about the Ben White incident. Now you were a little bit you sort of touched upon it, saying it could have gone either way, and you would have been okay with it. At least that's my understanding. You tell me what your thoughts were when that decision was made. When the ultimate decision was made, as an Arsenal fan, were you thinking, yeah, it's fair?
I don't think, just to from the gate, Ayub, uh, I don't think the Eze incident is enough for a penalty. That's just my opinion. Do I think he's made contact? perhaps foot on foot. I think the fact that Eze's thrown his legs then kind of uh, against, let's say, the calves of the play in terms of some sort of kind of throwing his legs out there, perhaps also may have swayed the referee in the end. So ultimately, it's my opinion that I don't think it's enough for a penalty. I have a very high bar for penalties anyway, as you know, Ayub. It's too important. So I want to be very consistent. The argument is once it's given, is there enough to overrule? Because that's what's been thrown out there as a process. Whether I agree with that or not, I actually overall, as a point of principle, Ayub, I'm always keen to get to the correct decision. So actually, I'm okay, generally speaking, to re-referee incidents because I think it's a bit of a throwaway line. What's re-refereeing? I mean, if it's clear and obvious, you're re-refereeing that. There is some argument that, well, if it's within the matters of interpretation, you leave it with the on-field decision. And I'm okay. You mentioned cricket, the umpire's call, and all the rest of it. So I get that there is nuance to say, look, it's a grey one. We're going to stick with the on-field because you have to have some sort of base to lean on, some sort of bar to go against to say, okay, well, that's set the threshold there. Should the VR have intervened? Well, previous precedent suggests maybe not because there is some contact there and we've seen this. But this is what I mean where it's a bit of a lottery, Ayub. In some situations, you'll see the same incident and they'll give it and they'll not intervene because you'll hear Dermot Gallagher on a Monday on Sky Sports Ref Watch with Jay Bothroyd say, well, once it's given, it's never going to be reversed. We've heard that all the time. Once it's given, it's not going to be reversed. Do I think the fact that it was on Atletico's ground, do I believe the fact that it was a pivotal moment in the game? Do I believe that the fact that he had to go check the screen out with Diego Simeone and the crowd and the bench and his manic behavior, do I think that affected him somewhat? I think, to be honest, you'd be inhuman if it didn't. I mean, I think he had to some extent. He understood the severity or the seriousness of the moment. He's given it, let's not forget. So again, the question is, should VR intervene? We know the moment he goes to the TV screen at you, he's going to reverse it. Now, there was a long conversation between the referee and the VAR. I don't know if you saw that just before that he was motioned to go to the screen. It was quite a long conversation they had before he was told to go to the screen. I can imagine some of that conversation centered around, hey, we think there is contact, whether it's enough for him to fall in the way that he did, etc. You know, that's perhaps for you to judge. The referee actually had a very clear view. If you watch it again, he got himself to a very decent position. And again, I think there is contact. But for me, I have a high bar when it comes to penalties. So for me, I think in the end, I'm okay just as an incident in and of itself that I don't think it was a penalty. But again, I'm just consistent. I just have a very high bar when it comes to penalties being given. I can understand Arteta's frustration. Perhaps, again, annoyed by the fact of the Ben White situation because you feel like you owed one to some extent, and this is how managers irrational in terms of the seriousness of the time, the pressure, the high leverage situation. I'm going to forgive him a little bit for being quite irate after the game, but like I said, in and of itself, the incident, I don't think it was a penalty. I'm not sure, however, the process is consistent with what we normally see, even in the Champions League.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I'm all for having the right decision, but I don't want the right decision coming about the wrong way, which is really what happened. And also I'm just not sort of okay with the referee then being referred to sort of the screen to re-referee. It should be a decision because in a sense, virtually 99%, 99%, 99 times out of 100, the decision is overturned. So what VAR might as well make the decision. This is what I just it just is a waste of time. You've got the referee sort of running over to the screen. You know what's going to happen as soon as he's referred to the screen. I would, if VAR are going to be involved, let them make the decision, let them overturn the decision because all that's going to happen is the referee runs over, waste a bit of time, and then sort of it's overturning the decision that's been made. So it's a circus, it's a farce. It serves no purpose because we all know as soon as the referee runs to the screen that whatever decision has been made, it's going to be overturned. So I wish that they would just say, right, VAR will make that final decision. If they consider it to be an error or something that referee needs to look at, they make that decision. Because otherwise it just seems a pointless waste of time. But it was the right decision, but I just don't like it. I'm not. The more I see of VAR, and again, I presume the argument's always been it's not VAR itself. The system is okay, the system can work. But unfortunately, it's the individuals who are sort of making those decisions based on what they're seeing. That's where the issues are, and it's one which is it's going to rumble on. I think somebody needs to take a step back, uh, and look at this again. But um, is there any point? Is there any point? Because we've had people sort of making decisions. Unfortunately, it never seems to be the right decision. They might have an idea, but unfortunately, the execution is never on point. So until you have people who have an expertise in the game and they are making decisions based on the best interest of the game, perhaps that's the only way we're going to get some sort of resolution to the nonsense that we have. I mean, I would go back to forget VAR until you have officials who can utilize this system effectively. Don't even bother with VAR. On-field decisions, you're going to have to sort of ride the rough with the smooth. At the end of the day, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get some rough decisions. Hopefully, they even itself out. Or what I really would want is the coaches have one referral
Yeah.
per half. That perhaps to me is the way that I'd like to go. Uh, it sort of perhaps it puts more pressure again on referees, or I won't say pressure. It lets them sort of focus on their job again because at the
Yeah.
moment I'm sure so many referees are lazy now because they've got sort of the VAR to rely on.
Yeah, absolutely. We've spoken about this before. The famous was it Tim Payne, the famous LBW appeal at Headingley.
Yeah,
That he, yeah, I think it was Headingley. Yeah, exactly. The famous
yeah,
Ben Stokes sittings where he
mm,
used up his review on what was a ball that pitched clearly outside leg stump, and then
mm,
he couldn't use one for an
yeah,
LBW that ultimately, with no reviews left, which was hitting,
yeah,
which would have
yeah.
actually won him that test match in what was one of the greatest test matches in recent memory, especially in Ashes history. Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm absolutely in line with you. Think about the psychology. You give the coaches a referral, let's say one successful review. If you're successful, you can keep that referral. The onus of claims and putting that referral in, let's say, is then shifted back onto the players, which means that if a
Mm,
player thinks that he believes he's not sure if he's not necessarily if he's died, but he's not sure that if it's clear enough contact, he's got to convince his manager to throw the flag
mm,
as they would do in American football to say, right, launch the replay system, let's go for a referral. It puts the complete shift on the focus and the onus on the two teams and the coaches to decide, do I
mm,
want to refer this one? Because if I'm unsuccessful, I lose my
mm,
review. So it could well be it takes the pressure away from the referee. To your point, lets them focus on reffing the game. And if a player wants to remonstrate about a potential penalty incident, about a potential red card, he can pitch and lobby it to his coach to say, well, listen, I'm convinced, similar to how it works actually in basketball, in terms of a potential review. Listen, I think just overall the sentiment is this, Ayub. I don't agree with you, at least just in the sense that we should move away from the technology, because I think sport more than ever now is just so lucrative and so critical in terms of its significance and impact, wins and losses. Think about all the debates we have. Think about all the debates that talk shows have. There's so many opinions, debate shows, all the rest of it that creates such a absolute demand on winning and winning and staying in the league and winning titles. If Arsenal don't win anything this season, you can imagine what that will mean in
mm,
terms of the scrutiny on Mikel Arteta. So you can understand his frustration. It's the heightened level of scrutiny that is sport in 2026. That means that you have to match that in terms of fairness of rules, integrity of the game, and all the rest of it. And I come back to it. It feels to me too often in sports the authorities show a very apathetic view and approach to, uh, again, having a little bit of controversy because this argument is that it's good for the game. Some people argue again that Formula One of the best things to happen was what happened in Abu Dhabi because you got eyeballs to the sport and people talking and the interest keeps going and the news machine keeps going and the media narrative and all the rest of it. And that sells. I don't agree with that in any way, shape, or form. The most important stakeholders, and I've said this to you for the longest time, and I know you believe it's the fans, and the fans make football a business. For me, the footballers make it a sport in the first place because without footballers, you don't have a game in and of itself. The most important stakeholders are the players participating on that pitch, and you have to do fair by them and the coach by making sure that your rules are watertight. And I come back to it. Are we comfortable with giving penalties away for incidents that would not result in a goal if you had that situation play out 100 times. And that's what we're giving. We're giving a bona fide, clear-cut goal from 12 yards on a post kick against the
Mm.
goalkeeper for incidents like that. It just does not fit, not in 2026. So that's the biggest issue for me.
Yeah, and no doubt we'll revisit this subject again in the future. Right. There was another game on Tuesday. We sort of touched upon it earlier, and it was one of the most astounding games. And it's football for the purists. It really was. It was an absolute joy. It was a pleasure. And I think everybody who watched it, I think those people who were at the stadium, will never ever forget that. I think that was just a sensational game of football. And maybe I suppose it's you had. I mean, it was an interesting contrast. I was really glad that Atletico and Arsenal were playing on Wednesday because it's there's many ways to skin a cat. And that was a classic example of how you can play the game. You've got the expansive, free flowing on the front foot, and then you've got a much more sort of measured and sort of pragmatic approach. Uh, Sort of, I'm sure both were appealing in their various ways, but in terms of just as a spectacle, that game, PSG Bayern, just incredible. I mean, you obviously watched it. I watched it. What were your thoughts? I mean, it just was it was a thriller minute. It was breathtaking, and it was high quality. I mean, that was the thing. It wasn't just a case of two teams sort of making mistake after mistake and just sort of throwing everything at the opposition. It was highly technical, pleasing to the eye, and of a very high standard. So, sort of talk me through what your experiences were watching that game and how you felt. I mean, I presume it was quite late, sort of for you to watch that game because it's an 8 o'clock start. So I presume that's 11 o'clock. Is it at your
11
time?
till 1. Yeah,
Oh, right,
11
okay, yeah.
till 1 of you. Uh, it's a game that I think will evoke more debate and discussion as any game in recent memory. And that's not just for the game itself, but for a lot of the discussion and the fallout that came out after that game in terms of Harry Kane's comments. You saw what Wayne Rooney had to say, Clarence Seedorf. You saw what both coaches had to say. There was a wonderful snippet with Vincent Company where he spoke about, and I thought it was a very interesting comment that he made at you, where he spoke about, well, um, what was the solution? Because if you don't go for it and you drop deep, that doesn't work against PSG, nor does it work against us. You either have to commit fully, or you have to commit ultimately to a completely low block, because the offensive power on both sides is what he was saying. The offensive technical brilliance of the players on both sides is not enough to go with any half measures, was what he was saying. So he took the view that we're going to meet fire with fire, and we're going to see where that leaves us. And I thought it was just a very interesting attitude and approach, because he essentially was saying, if we go in and dig in, I think we'll get beaten comfortably because they are just that good. Carragher, I thought, also summarized it well, but I don't know if you saw his snippet where he spoke about how each of the offensive players on both sides, Kvaratskhelia, Doué, Dembele, and then you've got Kane, Elise, and Diaz. Each of those six players got the better, generally speaking, of their defensive counterpart. So it wasn't a case of that defense was a shambles. I mean, Carragher spoke about it. He said there wasn't anything kind of a bad error or a huge mistake. I mean, you could argue the Elise goalkeeper could do a tick better in terms of staying upright and staying strong. But for the most part, incredible, incredible goals. That game, Ayub, in the first half, especially, I was catching myself. I think most people were, in terms of, oh, wow, this feels significant. This feels like a moment in Champions League history in terms of what these two teams are putting forward in terms of on display. And it takes two dance partners, Ayub, to make a game like that. You need both coaches ultimately to buy in to that way of playing to make that type of spectacle possible. But the offensive technical brilliance, I'm sure, Ayub, that I watched in that game was something that I've not seen for a long, long, long time. I mean, this was football played at a speed, at a technical level that I've not seen for a long time. The speed of thought, the speed of pass, the decision making, especially offensively, I mean, it was 5-4. Funnily enough, Sadov spoke about how it could be 6-5 before the game, and he wasn't too far off. I mean, both teams were probably left a few goals on the pitch there, but some of the finishing. I mean, look at the Diaz goal. I mean, this is just incredible. The Kvaratskhelia first one. These are classy, classy goals. The Dembele finish. I mean, incredible, just absolutely incredible. I think just the football. I think it was a joy to watch. You've been to that stadium a couple of times. You can imagine what that atmosphere would have been like. We speak about the PSG Ultras in terms of the way, and they'll be
Mm.
travelling, I'm sure, depending on how many tickets they've managed to secure for the away leg. But they travel well. But that stadium must have been absolutely bouncing in terms of the game that those two teams put forward. I've seen some quotes from both sets of defenders saying, "Oof." Shattered after that one, essentially, was the summary. So incredible game, Ayub. A real joy. Just very quickly, I think there's been a little bit of, I think there's been a bit of a misunderstanding, a little bit of the fallout out of this game. This idea that, or obviously Harry Kane spoke about it, that I thought the defenders played well. And I could see what he was getting at. I think what he was arguing was that they also had to meet the challenge of these offensive players, that it was at such an incredible level that they met it head on. But sometimes good offense beats good defense, ultimately sometimes. So I just think it's a case of both teams decided we're going to play. And when you decide that, chances are, if it's an
Mm.
open, expansive game, which it was for the most part, I mean, I could make the argument that I mean, I think it's without doubt that these are the two best front threes in Europe. Let's not, I mean, that goes without saying, in my opinion. Um, but in terms of at the peak of their powers, I mean, 5 of the 6 scored, assist to boot.
Mm.
I just think it was just an incredible, incredible game where both parties, before the game, it's like a bit like I don't know if you follow boxing in history, a bit like the kind of Hagler Hearns 3 round classic. It was a case of you shake hands in the middle of the ring and say, listen, we're just going to go at it for a couple of rounds
Yeah.
and let's see who wins. And on that night, it was Marvin Hagler. But yeah, listen, incredible game. It will live long in the memory, and it's one of the very best games, if not the best game that I've watched from a technical brilliance in a very, very long time.
And I mean, there's not much I can add to it. I mean, you talk about, I mean, I've been to the stadium, and it's unbelievable. I mean, in terms of, I've been to a number of football stadiums and I've been to a number of grounds where, I mean, it's Leeds, I mean, I'm obviously as a Leeds fan, I mean, it is quite raucous, but there is and I've been to Old Trafford, I've been to Anfield, I've been to a number of grounds where it's the fan base is quite vocal, it's quite energetic, but there is nothing in comparison to a PSG game because I mean the noise, the cacophony of noise, sort of before the game. I mean it builds into a crescendo, and really, TV never does it justice. I mean I've watched games for PSG, and it's never done it justice. I mean I'm not sure where they put the mics, but it never
Mm.
quite encapsulates how loud it is, and not just a case of loud. There's a real drama and theatre about the ultras as well. It is one of the most fantastic set of fans, and it's a very diverse group. This is the thing about the ultras as well, because if you look, it really is. I mean, your mind will boggle. There's women in hijabs as part of the ultras, which is mind-boggling. It really is. It's a cross section of the sort of French community, the Paris community, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful, and the I can imagine that the atmosphere is electric to start off with. After a game like that, I can't. I mean, I can't even imagine the noise and the
Yeah.
feeling of euphoria for those fans, especially when the game is finished. Because I suppose, I mean, the emotions would have been a high, sort of low, sort of with at one stage. Obviously, it was 5-2, so really, it looked all but done. And then obviously there's 2 goals. So again, the emotions must have been all over the place, but it must have been an amazing experience. And you're absolutely right. You are talking about two teams that have got front lines, which, I mean, these are sort of generational talents.
Yeah.
And respect to Harry Kane, because I mean, I mean, he was always a great player, and obviously he was well respected in the UK. I watched a little sort of sort of piece that they did on Harry Kane before the game, and he's absolutely embraced himself into German culture, into sort of the culture in Munich, and they absolutely adore him. Because he's a gentleman. I think that was the common theme that somebody who is as classy and a world class player, because he's somebody that I think without you don't have to meet him to know he's a gentleman because I think the way that he conducts himself.
Yeah.
And I've looked. I mean, his stats are phenomenal. I mean, we're talking Ronaldo and Messi-esque. His stats. He's made that sort of transition from English football to German football. I mean, he said he wanted to win pots, he wanted to win trophies, and I admire that. I think if you reach the top of your profession, and that's why I've always been, or was always critical of Shearer. Shearer just wanted to be a big fish in a small pond. And he'll always be that, in my opinion. I mean, I think he was more concerned about personal records rather than sort of winning trophies. And I sort of put that on. If I was somebody of a certain status, I'd put that on record because I think that was the case. He had opportunities to play for bigger clubs, to win the biggest prizes, but he always preferred to be the main man, the big dog. At the club rather than be around other big stars. Harry Kane did do that. He was the OG at Spurs. He's gone to Bayern. He had to establish himself. He's been fantastic. Wonderful game. I can't wait. I mean, it's just, I suppose we're asking too much for a repeat in Munich, but my goodness me, it's set up beautifully. In fact, both ties are set up beautifully. I mean, I think certainly, I think Bayern Munich will consider themselves the favourite. I think to just have a goal deficit, especially being 5-2 down, I think
Yeah.
they'll
Yeah.
certainly be cockahoo. I think Arsenal will be very, very sort of upbeat about the tie because I think even a goal deficit, I still would have considered Arsenal to be the favourites. To be on parity, I think certainly Arsenal are the favourites. So certainly I see, as it stands, I'd probably sort of see an Arsenal Bayern Munich final, and I think that gives Arsenal much more opportunity. I think in terms of the two teams, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's something that I'll ask you. Which of the teams would you prefer if Arsenal were to get to the final, which I think they will? Which of the teams would you prefer, Bayern or PSG?
Just before I answer your question, you spoke about Alan Shearer being a big fish in a small pond. I mean, what a way to have a go at your hometown football club. You come on, have some respect. But although I know you hold Preston more dear to your heart than you do old Blackburn. But anyway,
Yes, I do. Yeah.
look, look, I think listen, if Arsenal are fortunate enough to get to the final, I don't want to sound arrogant as though they get it, but if they do get there, which would be an incredible moment for the football club. Let's be very clear. Since 2006, was it, or 2005, the famous final against Barcelona in, I believe it was the Stade de France. I'll have to double check that. But yeah, to return back would be incredible. I would agree with you. I think PSG represent a brand of football, which I think the kids call playing in a flow state, where essentially it's just muscle memory that kicks in terms of the
Mm.
football that's being played. It's just fluid. There's not, I want to say there's not much thinking. It probably quite disrespectful, but what I mean, it's just a flow state of football.
Mm.
It's just, it's rhythmic. It's beautiful. There's a tempo. Everybody contributes. There's a big injury with Hakimi. He's going to miss the second game, and you
Yeah.
would think that also puts Bayern a little bit into an advantageous position, similar perhaps for Arsenal, depending on what happens with Alvarez. I think the Arsenal situation, I think, rests with a lot on the weekend in terms of what that game looks like against Fulham to then set themselves up. Can you imagine that they drop points onto Fulham, lose that game, maybe draw that game, and then having to head into what feels like a do or die second leg to, and then they become a bit of a desperate team, and that can
Mm.
always go one of two ways. But yeah, I agree with you. I think Bayern and PSG are better than Arsenal. I think they're better than Atletico Madrid. I think it's clear to most people that they would be the heavy favourites against whoever comes out from the Arsenal Atletico tie. But I would agree with you. I think as good as Bayern Munich or PSG for me feel like a level above in terms of the rhythmic football that they can put on show. I think they can, I'm just going to use the word emasculate you, but they can make you feel less than in some
Mm.
ways, just the way they play their stuff. They're an incredibly confident outfit. Vitinha spoke about it after the game. We went to Chelsea, we wanted to win, regardless of the first leg. We went to Liverpool, we wanted to win, and they won both those games handily.
Mm.
They'll be going to Bayern to win. And Company spoke about how he wants not just noise, he wants mass, he wants a real weight, he called it, at the Allianz Arena. So it was really giving a big kind of pull to the crowd to really turn up next week week. But yeah, I would agree with you. I think Bayern, from an Arsenal perspective, Bayern would be strong favourites. Let's be very clear. But Arsenal would have at least something to lean on this season. The fact that they did beat them earlier on in the group stages and have some sort of good vibes and good memory, although it's a very different animal right now. I want to ask you one quick question, just very quickly before we turn our eye to the weekend. Actually, just very quickly. There has been a lot of talk, and I think there is significant merit to it about the pressures that the Premier League puts on forth in terms of how competitive it is, especially from an Arsenal perspective. Some could argue they should rotate much better, but just to give you some idea, in terms of minutes played, highly pressurized minutes played, six of the top eight players in terms of minutes played this season from the four teams that played the Champions League semi-finals. Six were Arsenal players. The other two were Emery from PSG and Diaz in terms of minutes played. Dembele's only started 9 games, would you believe, for PSG in the league this season. And when you think about even Simeone after the game, he spoke about how, look, for me, it's very clear when I knew when I made the adjustment that we would come on strong because this is a team that's played an incredible amount of games this season, Arsenal 57 and counting. And I know that over time, they're playing also highly pressurized games, which is a very different beast altogether. Now, Atletico will rest all of their players in weekend because they don't really have much to fight for. They're pretty safe in that position, third or fourth or whatever it is. Arsenal have to play a very high, probably pressurized game on Saturday. Do you believe, Ayub, that because of what we've seen with PSG, the Ligue 1, in terms of the help that they've been affording PSG in terms of cancelling games, famously controversially cancelling the game against Lens when there was a bit of a title decider, do you think that is having some impact on not just Arsenal in terms of the freshness, let's say, that the players are able to show or lack thereof, but just generally in terms of how competitive and how physical the league, Premier League is? And remember, we don't really help our teams out by cancelling games or moving games to Friday night. Do you think that does ultimately have an impact when it comes to the final knockings of what is the premier competition of European football?
I think it's solely down to the strength of the Premier League. I don't think, I mean, PSG certainly do get some sort of favours from the French league, but I don't think that's the reason why they're as powerful as they are because they're playing a league which their streets ahead of anybody else. So really, in a sense, they can rest players. I mean, you talked about Dembele only playing a handful of games. The Premier League is a different animal, and I think that's the problem. I mean, one of the beauties of the Premier League is that it's
Yep.
such a competitive, it's a great league. But one of the pitfalls is that it has consequences because you're always having to give it everything, especially this year. This year, I mean, you talk about. I mean, we're trying to survive in the Premier League, but we've given, apart from the Arsenal, and that's the only team that has absolutely wiped the floor with us. But we've given quite a few teams a bloody nose at the top end of the table. So I can't see that in the Spanish league. I can't see that in the French league. So I think other leagues are fortunate because there is a huge chasm between the top and the bottom teams. I think that's the problem. It's one of the consequences of a competitive league is that you are always going to have to put in a shift and a half. But this is maybe where the coaches need to be even more skillful.
Yep.
Rotation is something. You've got big squads. You've got about 100
Yep.
people working at the club, sports nutritionists, dietitians, health people. We always talk about this, the red zone, the red zone. You've got to do your job. As Roy Keane would say, that's your job. You've got to make sure that the athletes you have at your football club are always at an optimum level, which if it means now resting them for key games, you're going to have to do that. That's the way it is. If you are competing on multiple fronts, I'm afraid that's the nature of the role of the coach and his team. It's a disadvantage, but it is what it is.
It's a very valid point. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Coaches have to just unfortunately be a bit smarter and work even more diligently to find where they can give some valuable minutes to squad players, right, in amongst the season, so that you don't have, let's say, a Declan Rice, Zubimendi, David Raya, who have played, I think, clocked 4,000 minutes this season, which is an unreal amount, and the season's still ongoing. These are three players who, at least in the case of Rice, Zubimendi, Rice still fighting for that number one spot in Spain, which will play a World Cup as well. And you'd expect both teams to get deep, perhaps, into that competition as well. This is it's a lot of work. Arteta has to find a way. You're right. I mean, it's you're talking maybe games in September, October, November, where he's got to find some
Mm,
minutes for other players to try and keep these guys fresh at the back end. Now, the other argument, devil's advocate, would be, well, the reason why Arsenal are in this position to be able to contest the biggest trophies at the back end is because he played his best players throughout as much as possible. So I think you're right. It's just
mm,
it's kind of, pick your poison, so to speak, in terms of how you want to go about it. Guardiola famously for a couple of seasons in the league, you'll remember, he'd let's say alienate Grealish for the first half of the season and then really use him in the second half.
mm,
Similarly, he's done that with Foden. He'd alienate him, uh, not alienate him, but just
mm.
keep him on the sidelines for a good chunk before Christmas, and then post Christmas he'd have a real run in the side. It felt very kind of strategic, that did, with Guardiola. But I think there is something in that. I think there was a little bit too much, I think, scoffing when PSG and Bayern put forward that spectacle as though, well, tomorrow's game. I mean, even my son was having a joke that the Atletico Madrid game, Arsenal game, should be probably broadcast on Al Jazeera. But look, listen, I think, but no, look, listen, I think it's just horses for courses, and I think there's no divine right to play a certain style of football. I don't think there's any reason why an Atletico and Arsenal couldn't beat one of those two teams, because it's a game of football, Ayub, and that's why we
Yep.
love the game. Just switching gears, Ayub, you're right. A huge weekend ahead, not just for Arsenal, but obviously next week as well. Champions League, big moments. These feel like big moments for these football clubs. Just very quickly before we sign off. We spoke about it briefly a couple of days ago. Leeds United Football Club, huge game tomorrow night. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes just to talk about it, how the nerves are. I mean, it was funny actually, because I messaged you saying, let's have a shoot today to discuss the Champions League games, and you responded with the fact that your nerves were absolutely shredded. And I was thinking, hang on, you're not in the Champions League semi-finals. What are you on about? But it tells you a little bit about your mentality, and I guess in a sense where your mindset is right now. You must be an absolute bag of nerves. But again, Ayub, come end of April, early May. I think tomorrow is the 1st of May, May Day. You would have absolutely bitten my hand off if I'd given you this position for Leeds before the season started. So it feels like a win for safety. Are you? Does it feel like that for you? And are you feeling confident?
Yeah. To the first question, yes, it is. It's huge. It's monumental. Uh, as far as it will. I mean, our destiny will be determined tomorrow. If we get 3 points, I will say that we are safe. Mathematically, we're not, but I will be very confident to say, for various reasons, because I mean, it just makes it quite a Herculean task, especially for Spurs, to pull a 9 goal deficit, albeit they've obviously got 4 games, so technically they can win 12 points, and there's no reason. Oh, well, there are very many, there are many reasons why they
Mm.
sort of can't win 12 points. So tomorrow is pivotal. But would you believe it again? Would you believe it? It's they've sacked Scotty Parker. So I hope it's not the Rosignol effect. Rosignol gets sacked, and then obviously there's a transformation in the way that Chelsea played against us. I wouldn't expect it to have massive impact, uh, but there is always that new manager bounce. Now, whether that's going to have the same impetus following relegation, I'm not too sure. But still, it sort of it puts a spanner in the works. But I'm nervous as hell. I've not slept properly, seriously, purely based on the weekend results. I mean, Friday, Saturday, and then obviously our result on the Sunday. I've genuinely, I've sort of, I won't quite sort of say I've like sort of walking up in cold sweats, but my mind is continually focused on the game on Friday. There have been meetings I've attended where it suddenly I've been distracted by the thought of Leeds on a Friday against Burnley.
I'm sure
Uh,
your paymasters appreciate that, Ayub.
we hope they're not watching. So it's a huge game. I mean, it is the biggest game of our season purely because there's so much at stake. If we don't get maximum points, there is going to be carnage. I mean, we're sort of we're a fragile band of fans at the best of times. Believe you me, if we don't get the result that we expect or we want, it's not going to be a pleasant sight on all the Leeds United forums, and I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to cope with that because that will just it will be a very long and painful weekend and a traumatic weekend. So it just is this. I if the players do what they need to do, if Falk does his job, then there's no reason why we can't get the result. Everything is set in our favour. We're playing a team that's already relegated. They've got rid of the manager, which is not always a disadvantage. But we've got a really good record at Island Road. It's an evening kickoff. It's under the light, so everything is in our favour. Let's see if the players have got what I often question, whether they've got the bottle to cope with the expectation and the pressure. Certainly in the first half on Sunday, they didn't. They crumbled under the expectation, which was hugely embarrassing, and they should be ashamed of themselves as Premier League footballers. Tomorrow, it's it's another day, another evening. I hope they're up for the fight.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. You started off by speaking about how you're right. Scott Parker has been let go. It would appear that Michael Jackson has taken over.
He's risen from the dead. Come on.
I was going to say, well, he's taking over for, I think, what is his second stint as takeover at Burnley. But knowing how goal shy Burnley are, I don't expect it to be a thriller. Tough crowd. But no, listen, I think it's going to be. See, I'm here all day. I'll be here all day. Or as you would say,
That's so bad.
I'll close my door on the way out. No, look, listen. I think it's going to be. I think it's a huge opportunity for Leeds, and I expect you to win. Just because I think Burnley. I don't agree with you in terms of the new manager bounce, because I mean they should have probably just let him see the season out. I don't know why. I mean, you might as well at this stage of the season. There's nothing really to fight for. Maybe perhaps there was a disagreement. Maybe they felt as though it was important for them to start that post-mortem and that kind of analysis of what went wrong in the season for them. But I just expect Leeds to have too much of you. It's home to Burnley. It's home. The crowd's going to be with them. I think even if they're a bag of nerves, I don't see Burnley suddenly. I mean, you might argue that, well, they've just been relegated, so they might start to play with a bit more freedom. They've been relegated for quite some time, so I don't really see it like that. I just expect Leeds to have too much. I actually think Leeds are a decent outfit that's just missing a bit of firepower. I think for the most part, they're relatively well organised. They've got some, what I would call honest players in some key positions. I think they're just missing a bit of goal dust, but I think against Burnley, the sheer volume of opportunities that they should be able to create for themselves should be enough. And even if it isn't, I'd still argue that there's a little bit of buffer there. I mean, to your point, if they don't beat Burnley at home, that's going to be a massive shot at the confidence. But listen, I think you'll be fine. I think it's home. I think it's before the weekend. And I do expect them to pick up a much needed 3 points a year. So rest easy, mate. Rest easy.
Inshallah. And on that hopefully optimistic note from your part, we can sort of call it a day. So I can have a little rest. It's been a long day. Emotionally as well, because I've still been thinking about Leeds whilst I've been with the suppliers. So maybe I need to just put my feet up for a little while. All right. So as always, a pleasure. Always great to catch up with you, and hopefully we'll catch up next week. And I'm hoping that when I do the intro, I've got a big smile on my face, because you know what that means.
Absolutely.
Hopefully that means that we're safe. Yeah. All right. So until then, take care. Take it easy. Have a wonderful weekend, guys. See you soon. Ta-ra.